Sound check 1, 2, 3. Sound check 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Hamilton Renewable Power Incorporated Board of Directors to order. If you can just please check your phones now to make sure they're on a silent mode so we don't interrupt the meeting. And please note that quorum is present. We will start with approval of the agenda. Could I have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as presented? Councillor Taddison, Councillor Wang. Any discussion? No, vote by a show of hands. All those in favor? That's everybody. That carries. Declarations of interest. Are there any? Seeing none, moving right along. Item 4 is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. 4.1, October 9th, 2025 was the last time we met. Could I have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes of the October 9th meeting? Councillor Wang, Councillor Taddison, any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, we'll need approval by a show of hands. All those in favor? That's everyone. That carries. On to items for information. 5.1 is HRP 25005, Hamilton Renewable Power Inc., operational and strategic pathways for the Glanbrook Landfill Gas to Energy Facility. Are there any questions on the report? Councillor Wang.
Give us a quick overview. Can someone give us a quick overview on this report, please?
Yeah, sure. Yanis Simatis, Senior Vice President of Hamilton Renewable Power Inc. This report provides an overview of the operational, financial, environmental, and contractual factors affecting HRP Inc.'s Glanbrook Landfill Gas to Energy Facility. Methane availability at Glanbrook has declined significantly, directly limiting electricity generation and resulting in sustained annual financial losses. This decline is not expected to reverse. While the cogeneration units remain mechanically viable, the facility's performance is constrained by reduced gas supply rather than asset condition. The Glanbrook operation is also approaching a natural planning horizon, with the Toromont operation and maintenance contract expiring in 2027 and the IESO electricity contract expiring in 2028. At the same time, the city remains legally required to capture and manage landfill gas, regardless of whether HRP Inc. continues electricity generation at the site. Taken together, declining methane availability, ongoing financial losses, aging infrastructure, and upcoming contract expirations, these factors create a natural decision point for the corporation. Based on this analysis, HRP Inc. officers will consult with legal services, finance, and waste management to prepare and bring forward a subsequent report to the board that outlines viable options to wind down operations at the Glanbrook facility.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Wang, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question around if we're winding down, what is the expected time horizon?
This is a very preliminary stage. We're still have to consult with other departments within the city and potentially external to see what is the most viable solutions for HRP Inc. operations at Glanbrook. We want to know, what does it look like for the city? Where is it best to reside? Is it best to reside with HRP Inc. or is it best to reside with the city of Hamilton? So at this point, I don't have a clear time frame on that, Councillor.
Okay. My second question through you, Chair, is a question around if we're speaking about modernizing some of our city systems across the board, like we're looking at it from different energy, building retrofits and all of that stuff. Are there any pieces of this equipment that might be usable in other areas that we might be able to leverage? Because I know there's a lot of infrastructure. I don't know what said infrastructure looks like. However, is there anything that we can potentially use in another place so that way it's not a sunk cost of just selling it and disposing it, or selling or disposing?
At this point, we're looking at keeping the two cogen units at Glanbrook and just transferring the asset potentially to the city and continuing electricity generation just from a different perspective instead of being HRP Inc. to be the city of Hamilton.
Oh, I see.
We haven't explored using the assets somewhere else or selling them or anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, because the environmental factor as well. We're obligated to capture the methane and then we have to either flare it or generate electricity. Considering we have the two cogen units there, methane is there, obviously limited availability.
The city has to.
The city has to use them in order to generate electricity.
Okay. In the report back then, will we get a report on the number of times we might have to use said methane if we don't have HRPI potentially using them as as a business case? Do we have a sense of like, there's declining methane, we know. The infrastructure is still there. At some point, if HRPI is winding down at the Glanbrook facility, how many times would the city have to potentially flare or make use of it? Like, so do we have a sense of what that cadence or number of times we're gonna have to do it anyway?
Paul Mulholland, Senior Project Manager for Landfills. Through the chair, it's constant. We run the landfill gas collection system runs full time. 24/7.
Have we, through you, Chair, have we ever explored subcontracting out said methane to somewhere else? I'm just trying to think of like, I feel like us winding down, it kind of makes sense from a business perspective, but at the same time, I do recognize that there's still methane. There's still stuff that has to be flared off. Is there still a value in that? Especially if we're not getting infrastructure, it still has to stay there. So this is the crux of where I'm struggling with this. I'm just like, I know we still have methane. We know it's not as big as it was for it to be a business case, but there's still methane there. So I'm struggling with this, Chair.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, how we do, or how HRPI will do that, and will it continue? Will it transfer the responsibility to the city is a matter for a future report, and those are recommendations are going to come back to us. So I would think that some of those detailed questions are probably premature and maybe more applicable once we get recommendations in front of the board.
Okay.
So is that fair, or is there more to add? Am I off base there, looking at staff?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that's reasonable, what you just said. We're in the very preliminary stage, so the next report will have more information to disclose with you.
Okay.
If I excuse me, if I can add to that, Jackie Kennedy, president of HRP Inc. The intention with this report was to try to create a snapshot of what we've observed to date and just outline that we recognize that there's some further work to do to figure out our path forward. But I think at our previous meeting, it was recognized that we need to be a little more clear and document for the board what we see today and where we think it will potentially go, invite that dialogue and input from you all at this preliminary stage, and then we can bring back something that has a little more clarity in terms of where we will go with recommendations.
Thank you, President Kennedy. Councillor Wang.
I think the last point I'd like to really put forward, Chair, is that I see these as assets for the corporate, for HRPI. I'm hesitant to wind down the operations. I'm always still interested in revenue generation opportunities. So this is one of those times where I'm struggling internally on this about, even though it could be a very good business decision, I'm still always of the mindset that HRPI could be additional revenue generating for the city of Hamilton, for our sole shareholder.
So is your question then, is the wind down the only option? Is that what you're saying?
Thank you for clarifying. Yes, I feel I would like this report to just help me make a better decision, because I just don't want it to be wind down as the sole exit out of this.
Okay, staff have a response to that question?
Through the chair, Shelley Hesmer, Treasurer of Hamilton Renewable Power, Inc. Yes, we can include that in the report to come forward. It isn't just specifically wind down. I think the report states that, but as we're exploring wind down, we would be considering those types of ideas that Councillor Wang just brought forward as well. If there's an opportunity to do things differently, yes, we can explore that as well. But I think the main focus at the beginning was to focus in on, if we were to wind down, what would be the options to even do so? Is it transferring of assets, selling assets, maybe using assets differently if there's an opportunity, keeping in mind that the city still has that obligation to take care of the methane that's coming off the landfill, and sort of just trying to make sure what is best for HRP Inc., because that is our role in figuring out to make sure that we utilize those assets as best as we can.
You good, Councillor Wayne? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Tattison.
Just to give perspective on some of the questions that were just asked, when we're talking wind down, you're looking long term. Can you just give that timeline for your wind down? I know that we're off into the 2050s before we're going to probably close the site. So just bring some insight into that.
So is there a time horizon for a wind down?
So like I say, when I say a wind down, like I look at you, you've got two engines here that are they're, I guess, they're looking at 150,000 hours before major rehauls or their viability ends. And we're looking at, so that's 25,000 hours that we have for each one, which would be 50,000 hours because we only run one at a time. So how long does that 50,000 hours last in terms of years for your corporation or for this?
Through the chair, according to Toromon, who is our operation and maintenance provider at Glenbrook and Woodward, they said we still have approximately 5 to 6 years of lifespan before a major overhaul will be required.
Okay, so when I do the math and I look at, say, 50,000 and I see run hours are 4,000 hours per year, is that 4,000 hours for both machines? So it's actually 8,000 hours, or is it 4,000 and 2,000 and 2,000? Because then I'm looking at, that doesn't, that gives a lot longer than 5 years for me. And so I'm kind of wondering when I look at that, no overhauls, no overhauls expected in the next 5 years. So at a certain point, we're going to have to do an overhaul. Okay, I get that, sorry. It just didn't click until now. My question about this then is, and I hope that gives a little bit of clarity, like we're not winding down like tomorrow. Okay, gotcha. So for me, a lot of this information to me is pretty straightforward. We have to make some decisions as a group. I said that, sorry, let me just want to go back here. It says to me down here, it says, just read, you're going to consult with legal services, finance, and waste management. A couple of meetings ago, I remember, people asking for, 100,000 at one point and then upping that to $250,000 for a consultant. Do we really need to expend that kind of money on a consultant to make these basic decisions about how we're going to move forward? Or does that expertise lie in the people sitting across from me at the table here?
Through the chair, the amount of money that we asked was for the feasibility study for Woodward. Because Woodward is a little bit more complex because there is the BP unit that creates RNG, there is the cogen unit for the combined heat and power, and then we also flaring. So Glenbrook is different. Potentially, we might have to go externally with a consultant to tell us what's the best path forward. But for now, we want to consult internally with different departments and divisions to see what everybody thinks for the best path forward.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. That helps me a lot. I get a little bit worried when we start throwing money at consultants and I think, hey, this is pretty straightforward. I have no more questions because I've seen the questions that Councillor or the chair is going to ask, and I'll just sit back and be content to follow through with that.
Okay, so I will pass the chair to you, Councillor Tattison, Vice Chair Tattison.
Go ahead, sir.
So just to kind of maybe put a bow on that conversation, we're talking about wind down, and I think there's three, the life of the assets, the life of the corporation, and the life of the landfill are all three different things and likely have different time horizons, right? So if I understand it correctly, the life of the asset isn't tied to the life of the corporation. Those are independent, and it's possible, from what I understand, is the landfill may long outlast the life of this corporation. That sounds like that's maybe one option if we're talking about transferring it to the city. So do I have that correct, that these are all three different things and different decisions maybe made at different times to wind each of them down? Is that a fair assessment through your chair, Vice Chair?
Who's going to take that?
take it, I guess? I think you're right. I think we are, the options to be considered now, it's wide. As I said earlier, the report was really an intention to say, here's where we are today. It's not profitable at Glanbrook. And so I think our obligation is to acknowledge that and see what we can do, and wind down at Glanbrook is one of the options to consider. It's perhaps not the only option, but when does it make sense to maintain a corporation as a entity to deliver this, the outcomes, on behalf of the shareholder that is the city, who has an obligation to collect methane as well. So is the setup of having the city sell HRP Inc. the methane and then having the HRP Inc. purchase that and generate electricity, but then can't sell the electricity in a sufficient quantity to make ends meet. The current setup, that's what we're seeing, right? To summarize. So the right timing to trigger different steps of how we go forward. I think that's part of the work we have to do, is to really map that out, Councillor.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, excellent. So that was confirmation in a detailed way that all of those three things, the asset, the generators, the corporation and the landfill are all different things and can have different lifespans. So got it. And that'll be part of future decisions. Thank you for that clarity. Do have some other questions. So the corporation, or at least this location, I think maybe are reporting 300,000 K plus of losses. When we're talking about environmental topics, hard costs are one part of it. The environmental costs, or the benefits or harms from an environmental decision aren't always considered. In this case, it's just finances that's not being considered. So the other options which have been cited in the report are to either flare, which is an option that's possible, I guess, under provincial legislation, or methane is just left into the air, which no one wants to do. Legislation doesn't allow. I'm not suggesting we do that. But the cost of those options, and let's just say the flaring and the GHG impact of that, isn't considered. So I know that we don't have that in the reports today, but is that possible when we're considering decisions on a next step for the corporation to include that environmental aspect rather than just basing it solely on financials? Because, externalities, they're called externalities generally, and that's what corporations, they have to look at the financial part of it, but I would like to understand if the environmental part of it and GHG emissions can be included.
I see a lot of discussion, so I'm waiting for someone who's going to take the mic.
I can take it. Thank you for the question, Councillor. At this time, our reporting framework is optimized for quantifying hard financial costs. We do not yet have an established methodology for converting environmental or social impacts into a single integrated metric. And that said, we fully acknowledge that these impacts have real value and must be considered in future evaluations. It's also important to clarify that a potential wind-up of HRP Inc. does not mean that methane would be flared by default. It can be a transfer of assets, and then the city will continue using the codes and units to generate electricity. We also have to take into consideration that if flaring is an option and we decide to go that way, an investment of buying a flaring unit will have to be considered. So the future report will have to identify all these items.
Okay, so Vice Chair, glad to hear that. And yeah, regardless of who the operator owner is, there's a cost to flaring. And I imagine that internationally there's a way to do that. Other jurisdictions have a way to measure it. I don't know what those necessarily might be. So I would just request for the staff to consider how that's done and to incorporate them in future recommendations. So it sounds like there's an acknowledgement of that will be part of the work. And I guess, is that okay to take away? Is there a direction required? Or is it just that's what staff will be doing?
I don't think we need direction on it. I think it's understood that part of the benefit of this is environmental, and that we will bring that back.
Okay, thank you for that. There's a couple comments on page 5. Any future contract is expected to be less favorable than the current agreement. Can can you just elaborate on, what's behind that statement, what's changed, and if you can put some color to that? Thank you.
The contract we have with the ISO, the RESOP contract, was signed back in 2007, I believe. And the price that we get is above the current market price. So it's a very good contract that unfortunately is expiring in 2028 for Glenbrook. In a meeting that I had with the ISO, there are three options we can follow. The one is the capacity auction. It's a 1-year contract. Second is a medium-term RFP, which is a 5-year contract. And then the third option was the local generation program. So all three are competitive, price-driven mechanisms that procure energy at much lower cost to the system. So these programs generally result in prices that are less from what we're getting right now. And they also carry greater uncertainty, shorter contract terms, stricter performance requirements, and in some cases, participation in the wholesale market. So while there may be mechanisms available after the current contract expires, our expectations is that the price per kilowatt hour would be lower than what we receive today, and the revenue would be less predictable and more exposed to the market and performance risk.
Okay, yeah, thanks for adding that extra explanation. Appreciate it. And similarly, also on page 5, just asking for some elaboration to the comment that if the cogen units operate fewer hours than the minimum required under the contract, repair responsibility shifts from Toromont back to HRP Inc. Just brief elaboration on what that level is or anything else you can share.
Yeah, clause 4.1.5 states that if the generators operate fewer than 10,000 hours in a 12-month period, Toromont may review the actual maintenance effort and reasonably adjust the maintenance rate. The reason for this is that gas engines are designed to run consistently. So when they operate well below expected hours, they don't stay warm, lubricated, and cycling through normal load patterns. That low utilization increases the likelihood of unplanned repairs and makes maintenance less predictable. In those circumstances, the fixed price model no longer reflects the actual risk, and some repair responsibility shifts back to HRP Inc. under the contract.
Okay, thank you for that elaboration. I don't have any more questions. So I'll take the chair back, and Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Just following along the lines, some of the questions that Councillor Wayne was asking. In terms of the methane collection, so is that something what we call renewable natural gas? Is that what we're talking about there, or is that different than methane?
As we only create renewable natural gas at Woodward, not at Glenbrook.
Okay, so the methane that we collect at Glenbrook, is there like a free market? Is there like, that's a commodity, we're burning it and creating, is there any way to collect that and sell that? That's just a general question. You may not have the answer, but.
So currently we sell the electricity to the ISO.
Okay, understood there, but is, again, so you collect that, it's collected, because there's the wells and we have pumps that bring that. Is there a storage facility there that then compresses it before it goes into the generators to burn?
Through the chair, yes, there's a chiller and there's a compressor, but there's a lot more that goes into making renewable natural gas from methane than what we currently have at Glenbrook. It's a substantial upgrade.
So the question I'm kind of getting at is that methane, is it localized and has to stay basically on site, or is there a way of making that transferable to another site that could use it?
Through the chair, as far as I know, generating electricity is the way to utilize that, and there's no way to really take just landfill gas methane and sell it because it's not as clean as you need it to be to make RNG.
Okay, thanks for helping me understand that piece. Someone just mentioned in answering Councillor Kazar's questions about flaring and that we would have to buy flaring equipment. How are we flaring right now?
Through the chair. So we do currently have a flare. It operates as a backup, but it's older infrastructure and requires upgrades. So we'd have to figure out how long that flare would last if running full time, and then also consider the costs of a new flare if at some point in time as well.
Okay, and that's something that I'd like considered as well, just to, so that we have all the aspects covered. Thanks very much for your answers.
Okay, second time, Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Thinking about what you just said, Paul, have we brought this concern to HCE? Because they've been talking a lot about waste heat and district energy systems. Is there an opportunity here with HCE looking at some of these assets and helping us with determining potential other uses in time for your next report? Just asking if there's an opportunity for additional partners to come in and take a look at this problem.
Through the chair, I would like a director, or maybe Jackie. Do you know the answer to that question? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
I'm thinking about, as we are preparing for the next report to come back, and that next report is going to have a ton more information. Because this is just an interim, like, hey, status of today kind of report. Is there an opportunity to look at other partners within our ecosystem to actually help us with brainstorming and rethinking how we might want to re-envision these assets? In addition to the wind down option. So I think about HCE. HCE has been talking a lot about district energy systems, waste heat. If we do have to go to a 24/7 flare, that is waste heat. Like, is that an opportunity for us to take this challenge and revamp it into something else in time for that next report is what I'm asking.
I think what you're asking I don't know the extent of the review that would be required or how much would need to go into that. So I think what we should do is come back with a next stages of a report with some options and opportunities and a bit more an analysis of trade-offs and where we want to go with it. There will be limits on how far we can go. We are resourced with the folks you see here before you. And so it's not an endless supply of time and opportunity to explore. But we can do some scans as to what's done elsewhere and bring them forward and see if there are particular areas that we want to look into further. That may be the best way to approach how elaborate or what the next stages may look like. So I think what we heard really at the last board meeting was we didn't have enough information to really kind of frame up where we are, and as a corporation with some financial responsibilities to not continue on with a process that is not generating revenue for the shareholder. Recognizing that it's not just about the financials and that we need to look at the bigger picture on it and report back on that. And if that's what the board is wanting to subscribe to, that's something that we can then go forward with. Other opportunities for, can we have it all? Can we have both financial benefit and environmental sustainability? I mean, that sounds great. At some point though, there's diminishing returns, right? And so the good news is we're generating less methane. That means the landfill is cleaner. That's good news for Hamilton. And maybe that's so we kind of need to take a step back and look at it from as the HRP Inc. and in consultation with our counterparts at the city for how we kind of approach this overall, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, Chair, that just a reminder that we do have HCE. I sit as a board member on HCE, so I know that HCE is also super interested in HRPI and finding partnership and opportunities that way. So I just want to put that bug in your ears that there is this other arm's length, solely owned corporation that has a vested interest in seeing any and all of our assets being used to its fullest potential. So there is that one. Just wanted to put that bug in your ear too. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wang. Councillor Patterson again.
Sorry to keep everybody here as, we're getting close to Christmas break. Just a question about the planned system expansion and the, I guess they're called additional vertical wells that we're going to be drilling. Or where, can we get a little bit of an update? Like it says 2026. Is that, are we drilling currently or is that drilling starting? When will that fully be functional with the 8 to 9 additional vertical wells?
Through the chair. So we're currently in design phase of that. It'll go out to tender early next year and it will be constructed in the fall of 2026.
Okay, so probably just humor me, how long does it take to drill a well there?
That project should take a month if all goes well.
Okay, that's fair enough. So probably 2027 we'll be up and running with this and we should probably see a 5% possible increase in gas flow?
Through the chair, the estimate of gas flow is simply that, an estimate. But yeah, that's correct. We should expect these wells to be in before the end of next year.
So when you made that guess, did you like estimate that on the low conservative side or was that optimistic?
Through the chair, it was on the low conservative side.
Thank you. So we could actually be looking at like, some added contributions to the potential for the electricity generation. So thanks for that. And I appreciate understanding that. You've probably shared that with me before because I think I ask you that every time I see you. So I'll stick that in the memory banks. Thanks so much. No more questions.
Okay, seeing there are no more questions from anyone, need a mover and seconder to receive the report. No. Oh, we will. There, oh, look at that. We'll receive that at the end. Thank you. So we'll move on to the end. The Board of Directors resolutions. So 10.1 is resolutions of the Hamilton Renewable Power Incorporated Board of Directors. Could I have a mover and seconder to put the resolution on the floor? Councillor Wang, Councillor Taddison. So we have report HRP 25005, which we just had. And yeah, that's the resolution. That's the resolution. Okay. Yeah. So no further discussion?
When's our next board meeting?
I don't know. Do we have a next board meeting scheduled yet?
Through the chair, we have not scheduled the next board meeting, but we will be working closely with staff to start scheduling those meetings.
Okay, just wanted to get a sense as to when that next report back, because the next report back will also include the feasibility on the biogas at Woodward. So are we lumping the two together or are we not lumping them together?
So the feasibility study report will be available in Q2 of 2026.
Okay, and then what about this Glanbrook one? The landfill one?
Yeah, I think we would be looking for something in Q2 on this topic as well.
Okay.
So separate reports, but they could come to the same board meeting.
So end of Q2, does that give you enough time to potentially do that kind of work? Because it might be kind of good to actually have a holistic view of all of our assets all in one meeting. And then that way, as a board, we can be a little more informed as to how the future direction of HRPI might move. And by that time, we will also have an interim financial report because we will be halfway through our fiscal year, which means that we should have a financial outlook because based on our last financials, we're only a year of runway. Right? So that means that in end of June is Q2, end of Q2. So end of June, we should be halfway through our runway. We should have a feasibility of Woodward, a next steps for Glanbrook. I think that June meeting would be a very important meeting.
That sounds like a great agenda.
Okay. All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and they're all important meetings, Councillor Wang. Okay. Yes, I understood. I understand your point. Okay, we have a mover and seconder. Yes. Okay, just show of hands to approve resolutions. That carries unanimously, and it brings us to adjournment. So no further business. We're adjourned at 2:05 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Thanks for